Mayor Ken Cockney. David Perleski serves on the BDA and is also a city council member.
Thank you.
And John Lafreniere is our board member from the BDA.
Thank you.
With that, we've got 45 minutes. We try and split it up evenly between presentation and Q&A. With that, if you can just tell us who you are and get started right away, this is great. Thank you, folks. And I think for the most part we know who BDL is, so if you want to go right into talking about the project itself, that would be fabulous.
There for the screen here, so you want to be.
Yeah, next slide.
Yeah, I'm not sure why this projector doesn't seem to work on the screen.
It's just small size. You can just click.
No, it's on slide 2, and that's on the first page. Okay, so where do you advance up?
I just click.
Okay. Right there.
Quick introduction. I'm Director of Engineering for BDA Companies, also Principal.
Val Farrell from Gooders Advisors.
Lawrence Kenny with AMS Consulting. Jeffrey Fitzgerald, BL Companies.
You okay? That was spelled back. Just real quick, high level, we're very fortunate to have worked with the City of Bristol on a wide variety of projects in the past. BL Companies, what you may not know, is in addition to all the public work that we do a lot of development work, and this makes us ideally suited for this type of project. We're looking at a major redevelopment. We're over 230 strong here in the state of Connecticut, one of the leading architecture, multidiscipline engineering firms in the state. We are employee-owned. We're working for ourselves. That means we make projects like this of focus and critical importance for our company and for the city. And I think also this project is a great fit for us because we have capability of supporting municipalities like the City of Bristol from planning all the way through construction, and can stay with you throughout the duration of the project. And again, all of our multidiscipline services are in-house, right under our roof. You know, the full gamut. You can see some of these here, and they're all right here in Meriden, Connecticut. You know, short distance away. And Jeff will get into a little bit on our team, but we have some great teaming partners in Larry and Val that we routinely work with and fully complement our team and really position us for success in this project.
Thanks, Eric. So BL, we're the overreaching. We're planners, we're engineers, we're architects. We're also surveyors, landscape architects, streetscape. We're very successful doing every kind of planning job from small commercial, retail to big, up to 100-acre planning jobs. We brought in Val Farrell from Gooders Advisors. I met Val in 2004, I think, when she gave me the Southern New England American Planning Association Planning Award for a master plan I did in the city of Meriden. And she's been a mentor and a friend for over 15 years, and it's a treat to have her on the team. She's one of the most respected planners and community outreach specialists in New England. And we brought on Larry Kenny, AMS Advisory Services. BL's been working with them since 2001. I worked with them on several projects, and he's complete, tons of experience in real estate analysis, market analyses, and both Val and Larry have tons of experience in Bristol on this site and in sites surrounding. Totally, I was excited to bring them into this project because they understand the community and they understand this project really well.
Can I ask a question? How do you've worked on this site before?
Yes.
With Renaissance?
Oh, no. Way back. We listed some of the proposal. I actually was brought on with John Leone when Bank of America, Bank of Canada looked at the portfolio and they said, what did we buy, where? So we helped. I actually did, and funny thing, I can't find them. Roger, I think this
Val's firm did the when she was with TPA Design, she did the streetscape design for the North Main Street.
And in between that, the redevelopment plan for downtown.
Okay.
But oddly, the first concepts that I did when John and I were talking to Bank of Canada was medical office. I can't find it.
I was just with John this morning.
All right, good man.
You know, Val, I know we worked together
Yes,
before, and I
yes.
was trying to think it was a streetscape.
Yes,
or
yes,
something.
yes, yes, yes.
Great to see it.
Yes. thank
So
you.
the way we structure a project like this is that Derek's the principal in charge. I'll be the project manager, planner, and I'm your single point of contact at the city. Anything you need from our team, we work as a team though, with Val and Larry, me, and all our support structures, whether it's support staff, architecture, landscape architecture, traffic, engineering. If we need environmental questions come up, something comes up on the site, if we need to do the subdivisions that we're talking about, creating parcels, our survey department prepares subdivision maps, bonds, everything like that. Anything that you can think of and everything that you haven't thought of yet. But again, it all comes through me. That's how all of BL Company's projects are structured. Single point of contact for a wide variety of services. Talk about the team. I live in Burlington. Bristol is the city that is closest to me. We spend a lot of time. Most of my friends are either live in Bristol or are from Bristol. My wife been at Yard Metal. She's on the finance committee of the Main Street Foundation. So we're totally involved. I've been part of the St. Anthony's community for about 6 years. I play piano. My kids sing in the Showcase of Stars every Christmas. This is our town. I really feel connected to the city, and I really know the site and know what can happen here, and I'm very excited to work on it. Actually, Derek knows Bristol well from an infrastructure standpoint and has a real long history. And then, like I said, Val and Larry can talk a bit more when we get to their parts on their specific experiences, but we already done into some of it already. But we move on. Talk a bit about a couple relevant projects that I've been involved in and BL's done that really, I feel like, translate well in Bristol. Store Center, I developed a master plan, and BL Companies was the architect and engineers and surveyors of record for the entire Phase 1 development. Everything you see up there where Gino's Grill is. And if you've been up there, it's a huge success. But remember, the developed area of Store Center is less than 17 acres, and we master planned over about 1 million square feet of mixed use on it. And it started with a Phase 1 project where they got some mixed use. They got some grant money. We were key in being able to secure $5 million of FTA grants for a bus-oriented transit hub, and some of the pathways and streetscape contributing to that, and that helped get this project going. It surrounds a 600-car parking structure that you don't see because we screened it with buildings.
But like I say, I'm up there all the time, and you don't see that parking structure.
Yeah, I
didn't know there was one there until you just said it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, it's a big one. It's right behind the main building behind the tree there, and that's where all the parking is. And that project started. It's a brownfield site. It was environmentally impacted, and we've created a fantastic place there. That at the time, people questioned, is there a market for 600 units of housing up there? Obviously, it was. It's full.
One thing I just wanted to add with that, we work with every type of funding source imaginable on that particular project, from the FTA funds that Jeff mentioned, surface transportation funds, to transform Storrs Road, a state highway, into a main street. We worked with DECD funds on the demolition of abatement of a building, you name it, and then also working very closely with the wide range of stakeholders, from the town of Mansfield, the Mansfield Downtown Partnership, the University of Connecticut, and the private developers, in addition to FTA and CDOT, and able to kind of pull that all together. And really that first phase was the critical foundation to springboard the rest of the development.
Having that great master plan and is the vehicle to go and track down some funds in order to be able to build some of the more expensive infrastructure. Science Park in New Haven, this is an example, I think is a great example of a parking structure where you don't have the ability and the land to screen it with buildings like we did in stores. So you activate the first floor, and we added 25,000 square feet, kind of the first bay of the first floor of the garage of mixed use. You have commercial space, coffee shop, that kind of thing. You can activate it and create a really a parking structure that doesn't feel like a parking structure from the street. And that may be what we have to do here, maybe not. Maybe we can wrap the buildings. We'll talk about that in some of the concepts I did there.
Again, working closely with the developer, Win Stanley, City of New Haven, as well as Yale.
And then this is a project in Jamaica Plain. It's a mixed-use development that BL's the engineers and architects and planners on. And I just put this up here as a good example of a lot of projects that I've been doing lately, which is mixed-use and multifamily residential, and it's remarkably hot, and the market is still very hot. We've got projects going on right now in cities very similar to Bristol. One in New London, 150 units. One in Groton, 140 units. Jamaica Plain, neighborhood of Boston. North Haven. It's still very active. There's a lot of people in the business questioning, are we in the 8th inning of the residential market, multifamily residential? The one I heard recently is, yeah, we're in the 8th inning of a doubleheader. So that hopefully is the case. I certainly got excited when the hospital came on and could see this being as we'll talk about that, the shot in the arm for really getting stuff moving down here. So I'm going to turn it over to Val now to talk about really our approach to this project.
Sure. I have a few slides. First of all, maybe I'll just revisit who I am. I started Good Earth a couple years ago, but certainly in my previous life, Bristol was my home away from home, literally, quite literally. Started back in, I forgot when, I did Hopper's Recreation Plan, when you're thinking of buying hoppers. Then jumped over to, I think, Departure and did the separability study way back then. And then, I can't remember the machinations, but next thing you know, I'm in John Leone's office. We're talking about the Bank of Canada that had reached out, and lo and behold, this morphed into, some of that analyses. Then helping the city sort out Rudy Gatto's, and then going to DECD, getting some seed money, literally, for an idea John and I had for a real plan, which led to the downtown plan that we finished in 2000. And then after that, our first foray in was the streetscape. And then from there, of course, lots was happening. Of course, the economy was also tanking, but, so this literally was home away from home, and endured lots of things. A lot of politics, a lot of personalities, lots of things going on. Over that span of time, I basically really just hit the ground running. I had to understand who my client was, what the personalities were, how are we going to get this done, and through that, connected to the community in so many different ways. Not just at the political level, but really at the community level. So it was a wonderful experience. So I would love to be back. Since my TPA days, I left TPA in 2008. And I actually became a developer. I worked for a large international firm that had a $20 million fund. We had a very specific mantra. It had to be a public-private partnership, and it had to be mostly sustainable or TOD. So I worked in Hawaii. I didn't get to go there. I worked in India. Didn't get to go there. Worked in Colorado. Went there. But I actually get to build some things. But through that, probably did hundreds of due diligence, concepts, balancing. So that's me. Relevant team capabilities. We don't need to go through this whole litany. The important thing is that our team really works in an integrated fashion. Some of the tasks are pretty perfunctory, civil engineering, infrastructural analyses, things like that. But there's a component of this that has to be integrated. Redevelopment is integration. You can't really separate one from the other. For an example, let's say concepts. Critical concepts. let's see what Lear's done, let's see what we can get, how we can stack this up. Well, it's not just engineering, okay? Because we're going to have to include landscape architecture, maybe some walkability, some screening, urban design for massing and connectivity, planning because of regulations, all of that. So you just can't go on your merry way and do one little thing at a time. So we have the depth to do that. But, although we know the task at hand, what if something else comes up? Maybe someone else gets another idea. You guys think, this is a good idea, let's pursue it. We have the horses. So we have the depth and the breadth to just handle whatever you can throw at us. So that's important to remember. The context and opportunities. Oh my goodness. I mean, Bristol Hospital Medical Office. As a developer, I mean, that first step forward to get someone to have the guts to go into a site after it's had the history, and this isn't just Bristol, this is anywhere. This is like my life the last few years. Sometimes I go out and look for a development partner, and no one had the guts to take the first step. So having the guts, this is a defining moment, because now we can wrap our arms around what will be there physically, and also what the market dynamics are, which is what Larry's going to talk about. So, this is a big deal. Because now, it's like, we don't have to sweat. Who's going to go in first? Okay? All of the rest of this becomes, you're going to talk about the parking and the connectivity. All of that defines how we end up. Although I mentioned market at the last, the market really goes first, because we've got to integrate all that. Okay, so you're going to hear that word throughout this presentation, integration. Because it's not just parking on the site, and oh my goodness, did parking come up in like 1992? Yes, parking has been sort of, trying to shake it for a long time. So this is our opportunity to solve parking, but also include this as a true community destination, because of linkages all over the place. We can go over it. All right.
So can I just interrupt you here, since we're talking about Bristol Hospital? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about how your design, of your information that you're going to be bringing forward to us will mesh with what that third-party developer is planning on bringing on board, and how will you work to enhance moving forward?
Perfect. Go ahead.
Well, from a planning standpoint, we expect that the hospital, and they've engaged, they've got architects, they're planning a building, and there's what I've done on this presentation. I'll quickly go to this really quick. Is just show there's a million ways it can be done, and I'm sure they're going to come up with one. But there's ways to make sure that whatever they do works with the future development of the site, and it allows us to be the shot in the arm that we want to get more stuff happening. So what we did is, I read in the paper, 120,000 square foot plus the mixed use.
That's changed now. That's up to about 180 to 200 square thousand.
Perfect.
Well, that's great. Well, I heard 120 to 150.
Yeah.
So I drew a footprint here that's 32,400 per floor. At 5 stories, that's basically 150,000 square feet. So, and that's a building, and I show that's the context of this building. That's how it would be on the corner viewed from Riverside in Maine. A 5-story building, spectacular, addressing the main street across from Barley and Vine. You can activate, they want to do mixed use, I've heard that on the first floor, so you take the front half of it, and it's perfectly sized. It's a total 120 deep, so the first half, 60 feet deep, great retail spaces, you divide it up. You can have restaurant spaces in here, coffee shop, whatever you want to complement the uses on Main Street. But this is just one way to do it. And then we talk about what you want to make sure that they do is have the connectivity out to Maine. This, Renaissance Downtown had this main spine road. That's a good idea. Planning purposes, you want to kind of create manageable blocks. What this does, you create a spine road of interest inside, and then you create, maybe this is a full town, city green. I've been at functions out there, put on a big thing for the police out there, great public space. Maybe that should be, this whole thing should be a green. And we create this space. Perhaps you reserve some land that if in 20 years there's a strong market and Bristol needs another Class A office space, you cut out this space, and this becomes a structured parking connected to a 30,000, 40,000 square foot office building here, multi-story. But then you have this, what we want to have happen is this being the trigger for some multifamily residential, maybe some more mixed use in a true New Urbanist style. The principles that Renaissance had put out, but maybe was just a little too, overthought it. And then we just showed how it can integrate with any kind of plan. This is the north end of the Renaissance plan, but maybe this just ends up being liner buildings, and then seeing how much parking is in demand, this becomes surface parking back. Maybe in the meantime, when this is but this is only phase one. We want this phase one to stand alone, represent Riverside and Maine really well, and then until the market comes, maybe this is green space.
But this happens at two levels, though, because, the consultants for Bristol Hospital are going to have their ideas.
Yeah.
Right? So you want us to help review that. And I think we're going to review it from, the perfunctory stuff, maybe, if you guys need help, maybe not. But we want to review it in the integrity of that site. And then also, as we're reviewing it, Larry's got to jump on the market, because we want to verify how we end up doing some doodles, okay? So we might have some recommendations. It's just recommendations on the hospital side. We're just advising. We're not doing the work, okay? So while we start seeing the wheels turn and understand what that's really going to look like, then our wheels have to turn and think about how we integrate the rest of the site. So we can have this back and forth conversation, back and forth. Because when you don't do that, how many times have we been to sites where the first thing got plopped down is like a secure fortress. I mean, there's no connectivity, the traffic doesn't work. Parking, hello, we got to look at the parking side.
And one point just to make is that at 180,000 square feet, that's the size of like a super Walmart, a huge thing, huge, and a lot of parking. So they're not going to do it like that. They're not going to do one floor. They're going to go vertical, and you're going to want your parking proximate to a medical facility. You can't have people walking miles. So that's where a structure is really important. But maybe it needs to be there needs to be gap funding or something in order to make that happen. That you want to show a plan that shows not only what the hospital needs, but what kind of economic development can happen when that's there, if it's planned right. And it's got to be an exciting plan. Like I said, this is a BL throw-together plan, but we work really well with developers. We team with everybody, and so we know, we speak architecture, we've done medical offices, we know the whole language, and we can work with them and make sure they deliver a product that works for everybody.
Jeff, I had just a quick question. On the medical office building fronting on Main Street, why is it so important to recreate that street wall?
Because great public spaces are really like outdoor rooms. And if you have a one-sided room, it's what you have out there. You have a big empty parking space. And that's, if you think about the great places that you visit on vacation, whether it's Paris or a ski village or Main Street Disney, it's great public spaces are proper scale, and they have nice broad sidewalks, public spaces, and the architecture speaks to the people enjoying the space. And this building is important that finish this half of the street to keep people, we want those businesses on Main Street to stay there. They're good and be
Plus this
great.
corner, I mean, a lot of people think this is a gateway. Yes, it is. That's why actually we ended up doing the streetscape here first. But this is also a gateway. And to think about what happens with whatever you do to Memorial Boulevard, if you're going to knock it down, reuse of
It's not getting
Memorial
knocked down.
School. Oh, whatever. But Memorial School reuse and all the other areas. So this is a gateway. But this defines, more than just defines the site, this will complete, not really define, it completes this corner here in scale.
It's an opportunity for iconic architecture.
In your RFP, you said that you're going to, considerable amount of work has been done, has been accomplished, and as I read it, it's kind of like you're going to look at what Renaissance did and review it and go from there. My take on that is Renaissance failed.
Yeah.
So I don't want a Renaissance.
Well, no, Renaissance, you know, I remember coming to see, what are these
Yeah,
guys
I
really
like
up to?
to see
Because
them.
it made no sense. But this makes sense, in the idea of development, mixed-use development in a urban center right now makes complete sense. And the fact that you've got a viable business to bring something there is wonderful. But what can happen around it is what it's all about. And the principles that, you know, Renaissance talked to, new urbanism, which is walkability. I'm
We do
completely
that.
on board. We do
Yeah.
that, but we do it in a way like Store Center, that it gets developed, that it's affordable, it's buildable, it addresses traffic, it works, you know, and it's much more simple. If you look at the Renaissance plan, it's hard to understand. I tried to make it basic, 2 crossroads, simple, walkability,
But
accessibility.
that's the point, Jeff. We're not going to be spending their money
Yeah.
reviewing Renaissance.
Right.
They've already done that. We've already looked at it. I think we're pretty comfortable with stuff. But some of the principles, the driving principles, were okay. That's in fact why you guys said yes, come to Bristol in the first place. Where it broke down is that there was no defensibility for market. The physical plan just really, it looked good, but frankly was more of a cartoon. So we don't have to...
You hit the problem that we have as
Yeah.
city leaders is
Yeah.
people like the picture.
Oh,
And
God.
the picture was great, and I even made a comment, and these guys laughed that, yeah, it was great, they even had people holding hands skipping down the sidewalk.
Exactly.
You know, if I could just jump in, and you guys can dominate on but one real big difference between what Renaissance is doing and I think what we're proposing is that you have a real project. You really already have the anchor, and that anchor really represents some very significant spin-off. And that's what you really build off of. That's that jumping point where you really begin that one investment. And when I heard 100,000 square feet in terms of medical office space, in our experience, that would be, I don't think anything like that has been built in 10 years in Connecticut. You're talking 150 or an upwards. That is a huge, huge investment. And so categorically, that begins to really kind of be a steamroller, the kind of allied health growth that could spin around that, because a lot of that is clustering, and that's kind of uses that like to cluster with other kinds of health-related type uses. And certainly from a residential point of view, you know, there's an obvious play for some component for residential, I think, in this market. And that's just in large part because you know, Bristol hasn't had and seen any real new housing since Huntington Woods, for the most part. So again, you begin to sort of build on that. First phase really begins to define a lot about what comes later.
Right.
And that's...
If I can just bring us back away from building layouts and designs and things like that, I want to get back to what it was that I was trying to get to a little bit earlier. In terms of, ultimately, this isn't necessarily a construction venture, and I know earlier you talked that you're a firm that has the ability to take us all the way through to construction. If we do this correctly, there won't be very much construction that's done on a municipality level. It's going to be private development that's coming forward.
Right.
So really, what's more important is how you represent the city moving forward to bring concepts forward that's going to work.
Right.
So what I'm trying to get to is, how do you manage that delicate relationship between that you're advocating for the city, but you're trying to bridge a relationship with a large independent private developer? And what do you foresee that relationship to be as we go through this? Because ultimately there are a lot of things that come into making sure that there are things that we may need to revise under guidelines and controlling guidelines and
It really depends,
vocabulary.
you know, it's certainly a relationship thing. It's building a relationship and understanding with the designers for the hospital. We know I know the players at the hospital, they want to do something nice here. They've already, you know, they don't want to do a suburban sprawl kind of office. I think they want to do something nice here. So it's, you know, then seeing what their program is, what they want to do, and, you know, encouraging them. There's a great benefit to good planning and design for them as a user. You know, having a place where the doctors and nurses can go after work and downstairs and have a cocktail is a great thing for them. That's a great sell for them to be able to attract the best and the brightest. So being in a great place is important. So I feel like they want to be there and they want to be part of a good thing. So you try and present to them why what's good for the city is good for them and vice versa.
But Jeff,
Yeah.
so that I think we've got down. I mean, I think this is holding hands, singing Kumbaya with Bristol Hospital. So now what's going to happen next? I'm hoping simultaneously, as soon as Larry finishes the market stuff. And in fact, we might, rather than jumping into infrastructure and starting to do the doodles, we might want to have some strategic discussions with you guys on how you want to go evoking more interest.
We've already been contacted.
So one of my, one of the things I was
Yes,
going to ask
yes.
was, and it was in the RFP, but, so our job really, my job is to sell the site, right?
Exactly.
So I was going to ask about how you would look at that process, because I'm not going to stop marketing the site
Right,
while you guys
right.
are working.
Right.
But I know it's a delicate balance.
Well, it is, but this is what we typically do. I mean, whether I'm at, ICSC for the retail side, working through some of maybe the softer economic development vehicles, CDAS or what have you, or tapping our development network, we want to bring in interest. Well, that's good, and I think you're going to get interest. But to Roger's point, it's a critical point. You're talking to somebody that's still got the scars, same with you, of Steel Point in Bridgeport. We wrote the RFP. You know how many developers we vetted on behalf of the city? I mean, that's an art form. To know who, and the way we did it is we stepped it. All right, well, you want streetscape? Okay, well, we're going to give you streetscape, but not until you have phase 2 done. And then we'll move up here. And you just keep stepping up. That's why we went through so many developers in Bridgeport. So the relationship, we are your advisor. We are looking out for you. So we're not only maybe helping you engage that development, we have to help you. If there are questions that come up, we have to have whoever's coming to the table for you pass that litmus test, whether it's economically, physically, or what have you, and that is our job.
We'll play a critical role as the city's advisor and also a facilitator. And particularly for our store center project, you got a private developer. He has goals and objectives and ideas and thoughts. And you have other major stakeholders, including the town of Mansfield and the University of Connecticut. And sometimes there's some opposing views in terms of finish and materials, size, mass, and scaling. And it's critical to be able to bring those people together and come to consensus and accomplish everybody's goals and objectives.
Can you speak a little bit about a strategy for public outreach?
Sure. I'll probably be leading that, and I think, Mayor, you pointed to it. We're not doing the charrette thing again, okay? I mean, Renaissance, that we get it. We understand what people want. In fact, I think what we're going to have to do is start infusing a little bit of reality, market reality, physical reality, all that in there. So, we would like to have a couple, essentially, engagement meetings where people come and also listen to some of the things that we have already unveiled, whether it's the market or the physical context, and start sharing the dialogue. So it's not going to be visioning per se, it's mostly transparency and communication. So we will have a couple of those. We can structure those any way you want. Would I like to have people, we do a dual workshop where we talk about some of the site and what can happen and what can't happen, and also let them mark up, doodle, express themselves? Absolutely. But I think as we move forward, we have to start getting folks on a path of understanding the market realities and the physical reality of the site.
I think it's an opportunity also to take advantage. There was a lot of excitement in Bristol Rising websites.
my
People were
goodness.
engaged. So
Yeah.
we have re-engaging those people and also getting them to recognize that, like Val said, there's a reality here, but that reality does not have to be boring. It can be great. It can be this. This is simple streetscape. This is simple building. Storage center buildings are really pretty. Those aren't super expensive buildings. They're not. They're affordable. That's a mixed-use building. That can be done here. This can be a spectacular building, and then talking to what Roger had said about, or the question on consulting and how you're going to sell the parcels, that was actually your question. I considered the fact that you guys sent the subdivision plan, and that had basically a parcelization out along this line, and it made perfect sense that if this could actually be a public road here, that so that this is the town, the city's green, this is the hospital's parcel, this is another hospital parcel up here, perhaps, or it becomes another person's piece, and then you parcel it out. So there's certain forms that make sense to follow. They can be adjusted, lot lines can be adjusted.
That's what I was getting at, really. We have interest. It's been a little awkward to describe pieces of the site because we just don't know that quite yet, right? We need to know about roadways, we need to know about parceling. But that will be the concern, is when I bring someone in, I'm interested, I want to help my community, I want to build a downtown Bristol. Okay, let's talk about where you can go on the site.
Right. And Justin, that is the thing. How many times we've all been involved in our lifetimes of, whether we're on the municipal side or the developer side, that they want, it's like, well, we're not coming unless we're just going to be on this corner.
Right.
Well, then we're not going to. Well, maybe there's a way we can help you with that vocabulary.
And I wanted to just jump back to something Roger said. I mean, there's certainly a focus, on this phase one and on the planning side. But I think with our expertise through construction, we don't want to preclude future options and understanding. So you can be a great planner, but if you don't know how things are really built, and you might need to establish a core infrastructure. And for us, as we look at maybe this being a kind of a main street within the development and so forth, there's a lot of options there. That could be the backbone of your utility infrastructure. That opens you up for other funding, whether potentially transit, if you had a bus loop through there or something, getting other funding, and actually making that a part of the project that you could get public funding for, which then allows the private development to focus on their parcels and development.
Creates more pieces that are more easily handleable by other developers. I talked about 17 acres in storage. That's 1 million square feet. That's a huge development. But if you parcel it out where a residential developer can come in and do 140 units, that works for him. You can do it on a small piece of that. It's affordable. It works. So you kind of create more pieces. From a planner's standpoint, all I cared about was having good access, visibility. So if you're coming this way, you see this is the entrance in. If you're coming this way, you see this building. It's easily accessible at these points. It's not like you have to find, how the hell do I get to this office? And that's the things we think about. And by having the big public green, it creates even more interest. You see things across a beautiful space.
I was just going to say, but the semantics here is that, yes, we have the full complement to construction, but in this case, we're not talking about we're going to go out and we're going to oversee construction. We're talking about constructability.
Right.
All right? So as you have that dialogue, we might, look at some things. Say you just, you call up Derek and say, all right, look, we're going to go, this is going to happen, can you start looking at this stuff? He comes back and hits the geotech, folks, and they're like, no, that is never going to happen. You cannot construct that foundation like that. Okay, then we say, all right, that's something you want to bring up. That's the kind of stuff.
If Justin, and we have a developer that's, we have to tell him, we want you, but you got to wait.
Yeah.
Literally, he's ready to go tomorrow if we say, let's go.
Right.
So if Justin brings you this, and this is real money, this is a real person who's ready to build, he's actually looking at buying next door to build CVS. If he wants to build over here, we bring that and we say, look, this is what he wants to build, you work with this guy, you'll see on the site now, as you develop, where perhaps it would fit best, whatever it is, and incorporate that in. So maybe your plan's not completely done, but we could start negotiating with him for a contract.
Can we make him feel special, prioritize him?
Absolutely. That is how you
That's
do
what
it.
we would do.
Okay.
When we're even...
It worked for you.
Yeah, whether we're working for one developer, we do that when we're working for one developer, and we've done it when we've worked for multiple master plans. If you think about it, some of this, that is the essence of a public-private partnership. Gone really are the days that there's one developer for one site. It's just...
We for Store Center, with our master plan, that was the ultimate vision. We did exactly that. Jeff and his team, we had hotel developers coming in. We had the Yukon Health Center. and kind of working where do they make sense to
Price
fit
Chopper
in.
Supermarket as a
You name it, we had
tenant
the
we
full
worked for,
range.
separate, and then Educational Play Care wanted to do a school there, so we
First
found
thing
this
you did
spot
was
for them.
buy in that cookie store down the back.
I know.
That's a must.
Spot it.
Jeff, I just had a question, getting back to the RFP. Some of the other submissions had actually quantified the number of concept drawings that they would be submitting, and yours seemed a little nebulous. Realistically, how many concepts do you anticipate preparing and presenting to the city?
I think our
You have to
concept
go 100,
planning, we had
obviously.
like 6, you could do, probably 3 or 4.
Yeah.
But
Well, 3
it's
or 4
not-
final.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
But there's, that scope is certainly negotiable, but it's not, again, we can do stuff very quickly, but because we're based in the retail, commercial world, we have to crank these out before hearings, and stuff changes last minute. We have horsepower that no other firm does
Right.
to be able to crank out great-looking stuff, get people excited,
Right.
I think the one thing in terms of our scope and our fee structure, we had a conscious discussion about that in terms of providing an estimate, at least at this point. We certainly can work with you. If there's nailed discrete tasks, number of concept meetings, we can go fixed fee lump sum, but you may want a little flexibility and not have to go back and do an extra for another concept, because you might have a developer come online and need to turn that around over the weekend, literally. And so we're comfortable, kind of contracting what makes sense and having that flexibility, and certainly even doing it on an hourly not to exceed. So you have some limits there and the flexibility as well.
But not to say that we might want to have some working sessions, unlike my kids, that the first draft is the final. We might need to just literally trace and start doodling with you, so that we might have 5 or 6 doodles that might emerge into one concept. So there's some thought there that needs to.
So we're getting pretty close to being out of time, and I think Justin had one more thing that you wanted to hear from them. You were just raising your hand? No?
I don't think so. No, I'm good. It's just, if I had to ask one more question, just with timing, regarding the funding piece, I'm headed down to the EDA conference in early April. EDA is a grant. I've been here writing grants for 7 years, 8 years. I want to write an EDA infrastructure grant so bad for downtown, and for infrastructure purposes, right, for roadways. Have you all gotten involved in an EDA infrastructure grant ever? We got an EDA infrastructure grant that funded the roadway through our business park here. I'd love to be able to do that here as well.
Sure, and I can help with that. I've written a number of them at TPA, New Haven, Bridgeport, possibly Norwalk. And actually sometimes, I'm sure you know, that, getting the regional rep up here, I don't know where you are in your SEDS, but, letting them know, even if it's not in the SEDS, that you just sort of like...
We got it right into the SEDS at the last minute. So.
Perfect.
And the pictures tells 1,000 words, so Val works on the technical side. We draw you up a very great graphic that shows what can happen. We can do a 3D perspective. We can do all sorts.
And your start to finish time frame was about 5 months?
Yeah, we can...
Well, it depends upon, it's really, we can certainly do the scope here in 5 months. It all depends on, we'll do it as quickly or as long as it takes to get the
I mean, if you need us to hit, let's say you wanted to double check some massing and things before you start engaging a developer, you might want Larry to start on some higher level marketing. But, Larry's done a ton of market work already in Bristol. And so, did I say Bridgeport?
Bridgeport too. Right?
Bridgeport too, but Bristol here.
Town, Connecticut.
I just wanted to touch and add upon the kind of like the grant funding. We're here to support you in every capacity. Certainly concept plans. Estimates are critical to understand what you're getting into. We do a great job, and again, I think with our design and construction experience, that allows us to be accurate estimators in forecasting, year of build, inflation, other unknowns, those things. Personally, I was involved in the Southeast Bristol Business Park in the past.
Oh, yeah? Nice.
Many years ago, as well as projects down West Haven, and BL has virtually worked with every type of funding source out there, and we had a nice little brainstorming session this morning. It's interesting as you bring the element of transit and bus service, and in terms of linkages and connectivity, there opens some possibilities there that we could definitely explore.
Great, thank you.
Thank Thank you very
We are
much.
about out of time. Thank you very much for coming in and talking with us this morning.
Thank you for
Giving
having
us a fair amount to chew on here. Give us a little time to get back to and tell you how we make out today in terms of talking. But look forward to talking to you soon.
Great project, exciting. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming in.
Cards in your cards and all.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Main Street?
She's on the finance committee of Main Street.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
I have the project.
Thanks, Al.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jeff, thanks very much for coming in. Derek?
See you again. All right.
Thank you very much.
Everybody?
Hey, you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Good to see you.
See you again.
Take care.
Thank you very much.
Place that it should be, that might be in a different location that would serve as a catalyst. We don't know that, but we certainly want to look at that. And then we understand, and certainly are not cognizant, fully cognizant of, but the intersection off the site of Route 72 and 69. And then we want to look at what the gaps are, and what pedestrian gaps, what the vehicle gaps that we have to introduce as part of the plan. Norm, talk about your approach to parking.
Get in your car.
And you're going to be out of business with the automatic
We're going to
parking.
be out of business with automatic cars. It's going to be work rough for us. Desmond Associates is a company that has a few specific points of interest in a very, very weird business model. We do nothing but parking. And we've worked with Bristol Hospital. We do healthcare. We do higher education. We do municipal. We do Hartford, we do New Britain, we do a lot of the same places that Vincent mentioned, and we're working together on several projects. It's really, in fact, we worked on this project when the previous developer was going to try to make it happen. And it's really very simple. You have to identify the demand and quantify the demand based upon, for example, the 100,000 square foot medical office building. Different practices generate different demands, both on the doctor's side and on the patient side. You can have a multiple practice that generates need for 10 or 15 parking spaces, and you can have a one-on-one kind of practice, which is usually eye doctors and dentists and those kinds of people who don't have that, and their staffs aren't that big. So what we need to do is understand the program and then identify how many spaces need to be there to satisfy the program. We just finished a project at Danbury Hospital. We had a lot of renal dialysis patients, and it was decided with them that the RD patients should move right up close to the dialysis room because it's awkward for them to walk sometimes. So we had now developed a system with medical facilities where you have designated parking for specific treatments, and it's working out very well. Less encroachment on the spaces by the public, and you keep the visitors where they need to be, and drop-offs are very important too.
So as part of Norm's work also, that has to come to bear in here, is there a demand today, or is there a demand tomorrow? Because at $30,000 a space for a parking garage, that's a big nut that you have to support that. And so in part of this planning effort that we'll be looking at is to look for temporary uses, temporary spaces, onto which we can glob on at the appropriate time when the density or the development requires. So it's really a placeholder initially, but the financing package will be talked about as part of this discussion. Land use and market. I'm going to let Mike talk about this.
Yeah, I'll touch on it. We've taken some time going through a lot of the documents, and this is one of those projects and one of those areas that it's been vetted, studied to death, for lack of a better term, but I think there are a lot of key components there as building blocks, and we don't want to have any redundancy in any of our efforts. So taking a look at the 2014 plan, that'll be the building block that Goldman and York report. Right now, we're in the process of doing the fast-track TOD planning for New Britain, and it just so happens to be that one of our reference communities where we're comparing not only residential but commercial and office is Bristol, and we've just finished off the residential component for that market analysis feeding into a TOD master plan for the downtown, and I can tell you that not much has changed from that side of things for Bristol. What we're looking at is doing more of a boots-on-the-ground approach, kind of going old school when we begin to understand what these impacts are. And I think rather than sitting at your desk working from a computer station, pulling all sorts of analytical numbers on what's available retail, what the consumer spending are, we'll go through that. What we really want to focus our efforts on this is being able to sit down, talk with the key anchors, talking about what types of uses we're going to have in this medical complex, getting a good understanding of who's coming in, what are the numbers of people coming in and out, so we can have some real data to be able to get what the impact's going to be with boots on the ground and how many people are we going to have adding to our critical mass. I envision expanding that out a little bit and taking a look at some of the other key users within the downtown, providing surveys to those business owners to ask the current space that they're in, what they're looking for, what if new opportunities were available, to be able to expand upon what you already have and look at it from a little different angle than just the numerics of what a market study would be able to bring. And from that analysis, we're looking to be able, again, to do the site engineering and developing our range of concepts and options, to be able to fully vet those throughout the planning process.
So looking at potential opportunities of the site, I think you guys know a lot of them. With the new healthcare facility coming in, there's going to be boots on the ground, and at night with changes in nursing staff throughout the day. Access from government existing government facilities into the site. Vince mentioned there's already parking currently happening, so we really got to look at that. It's a great opportunity. People are parking here during the day. They need amenities. There's also additional sites, brewery popping up around downtown that's only going to increase. Really to be exciting for a developer. We also know from past surveys that people have said, look, we want someplace downtown that could be like a farmer's market, cultural events, outdoor skating, vendor space. So we understand that there's a lot of opportunities, but there may be some limiting factors with doing this. One is everybody drives by and they see an open parking lot, really basically black asphalt. So that's really phase one. How are we going to almost rebrand this site for the public? We also know that we've got residential completely surrounding the site. What are the opportunities to get that residential pedestrian movement into the site? We know, and Mike may be able to pick on this, the rents are rather low in the area. How can that be improved with concentration of residents? And then also on the planning side, what design standards need to be developed so that any future build-out is done like the community wants, and it's not just a bunch of individual say fast food restaurants for a better term.
Can you talk a little bit about, you just used rebrand, and that kind of sparked me, because one thing Justin and I talked about was, do we rename it, get rid of the Depot Square, which has the Renaissance name attached to it?
Yes.
So,
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, with a big question mark.
I mean, when I went through and preparing for not only putting a proposal but for the interview, as part of your POCD, you had a community survey. I believe it was a statistically valid telephone survey. There's a lot of great information on what people are looking at and how your own community perceives the site and perceives the downtown. I think a lot of that can be plucked out, and we'll touch on in a minute where we get into the visioning part of it, is where we look at being able to vision coming out of the community. I know with the whole Bristol Rising, with Renaissance, I mean, there was a ton of crowdsourcing. Every latest term in public outreach was used. However, I think you have to go through that same exercise again. Everybody got excited. For various reasons, it fell apart. But this is a new opportunity. The biggest challenge for us is to be able to get people re-energized, because when a community is fatigued throughout any planning process, as we're now working in New Britain, which they've planned for years, you have a much different approach when you're dealing with a fatigued community, to be able to get people on board and let them feel like something's going to happen.
Right.
And I think as we touch on what our proposal is when we look at this site and how to be able to develop it, that allows for some community confidence to be built back into this process.
I want to elaborate on one last on this point here, design standards. Zoning, traditional zoning, is the least common denominator, and you get whatever the bottom line is in the regulations. That's what you're going to get. This deserves more, and so we would want to look at enhancements that go beyond the traditional zoning. You started it, and I don't know if it was by happenstance or not, but the McDonald's, the placement of that building in relationship to the street is so important, because it is a street front, it's a street presence. It isn't the parking lot in the front that you would find in a traditional. So we would want to really begin to outline for you those qualities that make a community a community. And that's what's not here. And it wasn't there in the old redevelopment. And that's why it was torn down and unsuccessful and so on in current terms. So
Vince, I just wanted to tell you that the current zoning regulations are a form-based code that kind of drive the site across the street. Certainly, it's not a form-based code, but there are elements in there.
But Bob, that's the direction we have to take this. And through redevelopment, you can impose those standards in a much higher level should you choose. And so I think that's what we really need to implement your vision. We have to go in that direction.
So how exactly do we do this? In the past, we used to do workshops, and we would come up with concepts. We would come up with concepts and go to the community and say, here are the concepts that we like. Tell us what you like about these concepts, which we still do. But what happens is at the end of that, you get big, grandiose, illustrative plans, perspectives, nice planning document, and it tends to sit on the shelf. Those days for us are over. We want to be involved in projects where we're planning and things that are getting built. It's very, very important. So, in order to do that, the community needs to feel that like they are the designers. So at our workshops, actual design implementation is being generated by community members. Not only saying, yeah, we want to see market, we want to see this, but actually we like buildings here, we want this, we want it to look like San Francisco on this street. Getting the community involved is extremely important, and we're able to do that a number of ways. Starting with local food. Bringing in local food right at the beginning, so when someone steps into the door at one of the charrettes, there's local food that they're comfortable with, and it's not just donuts and coffee. And what we normally do is go through a project summary and then break up into groups. Mike and I are members of the National Charrette Institute, and we have a lot of techniques to do that. Different types of boards that are fun and get people interested. In New Britain, we are going through this process right now, and we do a lot of different things.
And this is the first night.
Fun graphics for visioning that get put on Twitter and Facebook. So news of the meetings, which is very hard to get out there, especially for 40 years old and younger, especially the millennials, which is very important. They look at Facebook, they look at Twitter, so the announcements are getting retweeted and liked on Facebook, so we know exactly what's happening there. This just gives an overall image of some of the things that we do for the workshops.
2 Mondays ago, we had our first visioning workshop, which was really just big ideas, big dreams, helping us with our community branding. What do they want to see? And I was traditionally, the avenues of advertising in the paper and getting people to come to the meeting, I was asking everybody when they were coming in and out of the door, how did you find out about the meeting? You know, we ran advertising, we put it on the website. They were all following the mayor's Facebook and Twitter account, and they said, we had nothing to do tonight. We didn't even know about it.
By the way.
You did?
Really?
But I couldn't believe the people that were following, and the people of all different age groups. It was pretty remarkable, where you think only the young people were going to come in. We had people who were in their 40s, 50s that said, I saw a tweet, so I came in and I want to add my 2 cents, and here's what I think. And it was great. We had food. They stayed for the whole time and then some. We made it a pretty relaxing environment, and it was very low-key. And you know what? You didn't have to stand in a public meeting, get up to a podium and say, I am so-and-so from such and such. You got to work around the room. We had all of our planners and designers, and you had one-on-one conversations, which makes it very good to actually get to the heart of what people are thinking.
And so we bring the whole team. It's just not 2 people. We bring as many as we expect will be there, so we can staff a table. And so those little stickies on the boards that you see are the expressions of interest by the community at this very initial workshop.
Yeah, one project that we recently did in Shelton, Connecticut, a very similar sized parcel, but having the community involved with the concepts, a lot of news coverage, so when someone who was at the workshop picks up the newspaper, they can see the images and say, oh my gosh, I played a part in that. To plan view graphics and perspective graphics.
Hang on a second. But this here is coming to reality. That's this, and that's what that is.
Yeah, so this is currently a parking lot in the back, very, very small buildings, and in right downtown Shelton, and the idea was to create a mixed-use development of individual parcels This drawing represents what that could look like. When this hit the newspaper, the mayor's phone was off the hook with developers saying, I want in, I want in. So from the community to real-life developers, and now what is happening is the city is buying up all of these parcels and working with landowners to really create this vision, which we will be a part of as it goes on down the line. So we looked at this site. North is up on all of these drawings, and what are some bubble diagrams and some options for this site. Parking is really big. As Vince said, people are currently parking out there and walking across the street, looking at parking, retail, maybe parking, retail and commercial, linking with our future hospital use, and then this green space on the corner, linking across the street to Brackett
So
Park.
from an infrastructure point of view.
Yeah, so these are, sorry for the roughness, this is me working on my dining room table with my kids asking me to help them with their homework. But these are the type of things that we look at, and I saw this thing really breaking. I see this parcel being too big for the mass of developers looking at it. As an overall parcel, we've now narrowed ourselves down to a very small group. We want to break down the core of this, but also create energy and traffic in the middle of the core. So we see, as Jason, we want to build upon the retail to the north. We have this core of community space. This space could be complementary. You know, hospital, Quest Diagnostic, Jefferson Radiology, they tend to pop up. I'm working on all the office buildings by UConn Health Center. We just got 2 more approved. People can't get close enough to these hospital uses, and it's a great catalyst for work. But these are 3 little quick concepts about how do we break down this parcel into what I see this project is you need to speak to Connecticut-based developers, Connecticut-based users, and we can break this in. Over the weekend I was looking at the old aerial photos. Back in the 60s, there was a road that came through and came out to about here. That breaks the site down. It brings traffic through. It brings vehicular and pedestrian traffic into the site. So developers can look at a parcel and say, boy, I'm getting some traffic right across my front door. That all the way works back into your infrastructure question. You know, what at the end, at this project, what should the city do? How should they spend money? How should they spend efforts to get people interested in this piece? But we also took a look at, you can break it down into little pieces, but you also can consolidate some of those small pieces into a bigger user. But we do want to work with you and make sure that we don't leapfrog. We don't want to sell this little piece in the beginning and then kind of hamstring the overall development of the piece. We really see it working from the edges in.
I just had a quick question. That street on the graphic B, that's, or graphic A for that matter, those aren't your traditional city streets. That's a complete street. It's a walkable street.
Yes.
It provides access, but it's not a 50-mile-an-hour highway.
No.
This is Pratt Street in Hartford, right? It's a pedestrian, and even you may be closing those down during certain events. West Hartford Center, they have a Ferrari Day, which is fantastic if you ever get a chance. They take LaSalle Road, they shut the whole thing down, and they just park Ferraris in the thing. And you know, could have a car meet in there. Yeah, it's a complete street, but it's about building some infrastructure to get somebody with vision to say, guess what, this is a great spot for a Quest Diagnostic because I'm right across the thing, which then it starts to
It's really about taking this area and be able to build a sense of place not only within the downtown, but within that parcel itself. And I think if you can cut it down into a more almost new urbanist, compact form of development, you're going to get people that are going to be much more interested, developers, in these parcels because they have that frontage, they have that amenity of having pedestrian activity, walking back and forth, and ultimately it's a better product for the city of Bristol overall.
So Bristol Hospital's plan right now is in excess of 150,000 square foot, going to be around 180,000. They need and they want and they're requiring a parking garage attached or right next to their building. And actually, we started looking at the city perhaps doing something, but now they're looking at them building it, them owning it, and them getting the revenue from it.
Well, that's what we want to. We've moved the parking up a little north because talking with Norm, we don't want to eat in too much to that revenue that they want. We don't. We saw some needs, maybe some smaller municipal parking.
Your plan here had in concept at least a parking garage at the hospital land.
We've never seen a hospital, we swung by the planning office, we haven't
They don't
seen
have
the site
anything yet.
plan.
They don't have-
So-
They're working on it now.
But at this point, potentially, yes, we thought the Bristol Hospital site was all-inclusive, they had their own
Okay.
parking and everything.
Okay.
Where we saw up here was more municipal parking to support the courthouse, plus a transit hub in this area here. So, but we would have to work that, even this infrastructure of this road, maybe that's actually part of the Bristol Hospital, and the city only built it to here. And we just create this system
We
where...
don't know, but that's part of this effort. And I think we need to think in incremental. Even though we plan for the big picture, we've got to think about what can get done, what needs to get done, what can get done soon, and then what goes on farther.
Yeah, the thought of one giant development taking this over, it's tough, so parcelization makes a lot of sense. And we can do that and also get what the community is asking for. Here's our concept. If we take
A concept.
A concept. If we take the previous plans and move them down, North Main is heading up, Main Street is right here. This concept shows the parcelization with the healthcare facility, parking for the public, and then slow incrementing developments. The rest of the parcels are open space lawn areas for the public.
For the short term.
For the short term. So, for an example, like I said in the beginning, the rebranding, getting rid of the asphalt, what if it becomes all lawn with some trees? Public can use it. Maybe there's some inexpensive stone dust pathways throughout the area. But developers know that there are pieces that can be developed. So that while development is coming in, there's people parking, people walking, people going to vendors, outdoor frisbee, using the actual developments that are coming in. So the developers are saying, wow, there's a lot of people currently using the site.
Yeah, and I think when you look at it, it's not just green space. There are good economic uses coming out of that green space. When we're looking and staying current in trends in Connecticut, we are now a little bit further behind, but we're on the verge of like food trucks, food vendors, having outdoor venues, agritourism, farmers markets are really big ways that any way a community can accommodate those in a centralized location with some other development around. It lends a lot to getting that black eye off of the site and looking at this as a real asset. Some of those food trucks then could ultimately be new vendors that may take on potential brick and mortar spaces they can get off the ground. So it's looking at being able to have almost like an incubator business there residing within that public space as part of the core.
Right. And so then it transitioned into what I would say is the full build out with maybe a potential parking garage, but plaza spaces and creating linear parklets throughout the entire site. Very similar to Clinton Crossings, if anybody's gone to the outlet store, where you've got the shops and you've got these very big wide walkways with seating and gathering spaces throughout the whole area. Exactly what Renaissance was saying and trying to do is creating these piazzas. These are essentially micro-linear piazza spaces throughout the development.
But this, as shown one way, can certainly be that. So this is just an illustration of what I would hope would be many different alternatives.
I think you can see we got overly excited about the opportunity to be able to kind of put the pen to the pad and share some ideas, and maybe a little too much time on our hands for doing a workshop the other day. But I think our passion really shows in it.
So at the end, you need some real solid engineering-based, planning-based recommendation. Site-specific improvements. We need regulation, design guidelines. Public infrastructure improvements, identifying what your investment may or may not be. Financial strategies, can this be a public-private partnerships? We're working together on one now in Orange, where the state is involved and is an active developer, working at a train station, building, that's what I'm referring to, building partnerships, but really setting some priorities to get you off the dime, because you've been sitting on that dime for a long time. So, why are we the best fit for this? We've done this. We are doing this downtown Torrington. We did all the infrastructure and engineering work down in Harbor Point, down in Stamford, adjacent to that rail station, in the process of New Britain. So we've been doing this for a while. But really, here's why about Bristol. We have a history here. I don't think we would be in this room if we hadn't performed well. We obviously care about your community. We've been working here for a long time, working on the parks, on some of the water resource issues. You name it, we've been working on ESPN, schools, so on. And we're in this business because we want to have a positive impact. And I think we've started that positive impact. This is just another facet of that positive impact that I hope we can have with you.
I have a question. Since the hospital announced, we've had a number of developers call us up, one in particular ready to go yesterday. If you were to get a job, would you work with this guy immediately, knowing that you still have a lot of work to do, to maybe identify a parcel that may work for him, and if it's a viable option for going downtown?
The answer is absolutely yes, but the key to that is not to make a mistake. Don't let him grab the low-hanging fruit. Get him to grab the fruit that you want him to grab, he wants, and he wants him to grab in the right location. It's easy on a vacant site, I want this, but what does that do to the rest of your project?
And we've had to slow him down. We actually met with him 2 weeks ago and said, we love you looking at Bristol, but give us time.
Give us the time to get into this, to understand, get some form to this thing, to make sure that you're not cutting off an option.
Yeah, and ultimately from the community standpoint, from the resident standpoint, saying that, well, someone just struck while they are on top, but if there's a well-thought-out plan, even done in an expedited manner, as long as that development conforms with the plan, you now have the faith of the community that this is something that we have buy-in, this is something that we've brought in somebody because of the plan, and that we're able to move forward with confidence.
Yeah, we were involved in a project and they're saying, oh my Lord, why did you let that piece go so soon? And if they just delayed it ever so slightly to think it through, and it put them in a box. So we don't want you to be in a box. We want you to glom onto that developer.
He is flexible where he goes, he just wants to go.
But my experience in the marketplace right now is you cannot delay that either, because they will go somewhere else.
And that's
so.
And we know he's looking.
I'm working with a developer now in Plainville in the industrial park. He wants to almost get a project approved just because these people, they either want to go and if they get scared, they move. So the good thing about our work is, about me personally, half my work is with private developers, and I'm on the other end. So we're able to get you very quick, easy answers. And yeah, but you do have to act quickly, because this person will move to another location.
I noticed, fellows, that you had a 6-month timeline on the beginning to the completion of the plan. I know I'm going to ask the question, I probably already know the answer. Even after this plan's done, you would be available to help us in the future?
Yeah. This is the plan. And then in the recommendations are going to be implementation measures that you're going to need to follow up on. You know, for example, if the investment is in a street, you know, and what is the source of that money? And what are the conditions of getting that money? And so on. So, if you're going to pick the state's pocket and DECD, then you're going to have to play by their rules. And so...
yeah, we envision an ongoing role of providing some engineering assessment, positioning members, taking a real look at everything, going forward. The plan, this is always the case, the plan is just scratching the surface, and why so many plans and a lot of other communities fail is when they get to implementation, they think, you know, just because they have a plan, that's just going to implement itself. I mean, you guys know that's not going to happen, and we're available to be there every step of the way.
And from the parking perspective, there's a lot of economics that change as the development morphs through its growth. We just finished, years ago, we finished Blueback Square. We were on that from the beginning. We just finished Mansfield and the Stores, which is another micro-development sort of like this. There are ways of developing financing from the municipal's perspective that puts sort of the burden on the private developer, and until those parking facilities reach maturity, the municipality doesn't take them over. So it reaches generation of revenue, it reaches overhead and profit, and then you take and that's written into the original agreement. So
Stores is an interesting project.
Stores is a very interesting project.
When we did the big picture of that 12 years ago, something on that, and that was always the vision. Now it's been implemented, but that has been, you talk about a design code that they really wrote on top of the zoning code in order for that to occur, and it's obviously successful.
Very involved, and that changed as it was in construction and in development. It changed. There was supposed to be some housing in the back that never went in. You know, the grocery store went in last. They took the post office over. You have to be flexible all throughout. It's a process. It's not a one-time shot. And, you know, I think we all intend to stay with you throughout the whole process.
So can I just ask, in terms of, there's already an existing design template book that we have out there. We have existing zoning regulations and restrictive measures in terms of development. At some point, we have to be able to provide a business-friendly environment that enables us to encourage people to come onto the site. Can you maybe just talk a little bit in terms of what you would potentially do to our zoning regs to try and incentivize people to come here without necessarily giving the store away?
I don't know that I would do it through zoning necessarily. As a redevelopment agency, you have other rights that you can pursue under the statutes, and so the underlying zoning would be what you want it to be. It could be what it is today or something different. But in terms of the development standards, you can write in your own development standards through Chapter 132 of the statutes, and that's what I would expect you would want to do. And those aren't necessarily unfriendly at all, because a developer, what it helps in one sense is that it assures developers, new developers, that the next person in will have similar standards, so they don't have to worry about an incompatible design, incompatible use.
Yeah, I think too what Roger was asking too was about whether or not there's other tools and sources out there, whether it's a TIF or using the enterprise zone to be able to offset some of those costs and ensure that the developer is coming in with almost a no-brainer, for lack of a better term, or something that's going to work for their numbers standpoint.
But from a developer approval status, to get somebody in quickly, again, if those standards, redevelopment standards, are in place, they can be, the person comes in and meets those standards, and it can be done much more quickly than through the normal special permit process that you have elsewhere in your zoning regulations. Redevelopment regulations supersede, can supersede if you choose to, can supersede zoning on this place, but it has to go through the formal adoption process, and that control is going forward. And so there's nothing, and I'm seeing you're shaking your head, and you've obviously thought that through. But that's the way it can be done successfully, and that's the way most projects like this have been done and continue to be done.
I was going to touch on the TIF and the enterprise zone stuff. With, do you all have experience with EDA grants, Tiger grants, those kind of opportunities that would sort of work well with the site?
4 years ago or 5 years ago, we drafted a series of Tiger grants for the city of Hartford while we were doing work there, and I believe they were successful to the tune of about $12 million.
We did the joint Tiger grant that we were part of that joint Tiger grant for New Haven and surrounding communities. We were successful there. We have worked with EDA, not so much of late, but yes, we have worked with EDA in their particular grants.
Yeah, and recently we've been doing a lot of the community development block grants for the
all the comp plans.
All the comp plans, as well as for disaster recovery along the coastline, for coastal resilience. But yeah, we're very well familiar with being able to leverage what's out there and be able to use it in the best interest for the city.
And in the Torrington project, that was a 132 municipal development plan-based project for implementation.
So if you were to get the, we have to go to council?
Yes.
So after council meeting, you would start pretty quick?
We'll follow up with on the details of a contract, and we're ready to go. Okay. We have different teams. We're plenty large, as you know, and this is the team, and these guys are helping, and then...
We're not the marketing team here with just the pretty faces. Everybody here is going to be at the meetings doing all the work. We're vested in it. We just don't, as we send out the marketing team and then switch with the technical team. I mean, we don't have a marketing team. We're the technical team as well as the face of everything. That's why we feel our process kind of meshes well together, not only with the community, but with the public. When we're there and we care, it goes a long way.
But there's no long lead time items on this. Luckily, you have so much data.
We already started.
Yeah, we already. It's not like you need data that has to take months.
I know as a councilman and now mayor, going on 10 years, I've had great experience with Mullen.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
We've had fun here.
Yeah.
A lot of good stuff gone on over. When did we start, Roger?
Oh, goodness gracious.
4 mayors ago. 4 mayors ago.
I think the first one I remember working with you on was the Park
Master Plan.
The Park Master Plan. That was, what, 2005?
2004, 2005.
Yeah.
Just anecdotally, I have family from Stamford, long-time family connections, and I didn't realize that you were involved in the Yellow Town project. And it's quite a
That was a large project. We actually established an office and had a full-time staff devoted to that project for
7 years.
6, 7 years. All of the park work, all of the infrastructure, the streets. I can remember unrealistic deadlines, spending weekends knocking out concept plans for infrastructure in order to meet Tiger Grant requirements.
I don't have any more questions.
I just have one question. Just looking over the site concepts, I don't see anything about housing in here. I mean, could you put housing in there, like retail on the bottom and housing on top?
The answer to that is, can you physically do it? Yes. Do you want to do it? That's a choice that we would have to develop as part of this discussion. One of the issues, that's a great concept for CP Lot Square, and also we've got this the traditional retail office with workforce housing above. The reality of that is that unless it's done very carefully, it becomes very expensive housing because of the fire codes. Standalones within this area certainly would be better, but it has to be, and I'm getting into areas of...
And I think too, based on the catalyst that's there now, that medical office, and realizing how that type of use likes to cluster other like uses together, could the upper floors, rather than be housing, which the market is very, very limited now, be much more better suited as types of medical offices that can capitalize on that can be complementary, so you could have the ground floor retail restaurants, and then have an upper story office space.
The issue here in Bristol and in other communities is that the square foot rents are low, and low enough unless there's some incentivization for a developer to do that, they can't cover their building costs as we know them today. However, if there was site preparation and there was a building pad already there by city investment, that would be much more attractive. And what those are, we don't know yet, but we need to, if that's an alternative that needs to be explored, that's part of this process, and I would fully expect that to be done.
Gentlemen, thank you very much
Thanks
for coming in and talking with us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. What? Jason.
I'm making a different choice.
I live in Shelton. So right downtown, the New Avenue, Center Street, that block, the parking lot, so it's burned down.